the Beale Street Bullies. Today, my guest is Geoff Calkins. We're talking about his time covering Coach Cal, his time covering Penny Hardaway, talking about the upcoming games that the Memphis Tiger has with Tulane on Wednesday in the conference tournament and what he feels Memphis needs to do in order to get an NCAA tournament bid. Tune in. So, Geoff, tell me a little bit about your, when you got started covering sports in Memphis and things of that nature. What kind of drove you to kind of get into that field?
I've told this story. And occasionally I get, because I was a lawyer once upon a time. I was a lawyer in Washington, D.C., and I was working for a big firm, and I was intensely unhappy. I think that period after you finish, in your 20s, when you're supposed to be figuring out what you want to do, is a really hard period for a lot of people. And it was for me. And I finally just said, I always wanted to be a sport. I read the sports page when I was a kid. I always wanted to be a sports writer. And I said, I'm going to give it a shot. And I moved to a little paper in Alabama where I was making $225 a week covering high school sports. And I was 30 already by the time it happened. And I said, I'll just give it a shot. Now, I didn't know for sure. Like people say all the time, follow your bliss or do it. No one knows, like, is it going to work or not? But I think you got to give it a shot. So I gave it a shot, and I was in Alabama for 2 years, and then I was in Miami for 2 years, and then I came here in 96, so 25 years ago, really. And I didn't know that I'd be in Memphis for forever. I thought maybe I'd be in Memphis for another 2 years, but I liked it. And, I fell in love with the town, and it's an easy place to live. And the sports world kept changing and getting better. The Grizzlies came, obviously John Calipari in your era was a blast. So that was fun. Then the Grizzlies got good. That was fun. And so it's been then Memphis football has gotten pretty good. Like that's been fun. So it keeps changing, but it's been entertaining for now, 25 years, first at the Commercial Appeal and now at the Daily Memphian and at 92.9 FM ESPN. So it's been a blast. I've had a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. So what was your time like covering Cal? I was fortunate enough to play for him. I kind of still sometimes getting to little arguments with some fans because they say some things about my guy and I take it offensive.
When did you first meet Cal?
I first met Coach.
Oh, the first time you met him, yeah.
I first met Coach so I was committed for a short period of time, and I decommitted. And when Memphis jumped into my recruitment.
Who were you committed to?
Michigan State.
All right.
And
you decommitted, and then Memphis jumps in. And this is when you were at Laurinburg?
Yeah, it was right before I got there. DK was, I had a great conversation with DK and Tony Barbee. I knew Tony Barbee because he recruited my brother to UMass.
Oh, I see.
And so I was familiar with him, and he was familiar with my family. So I was talking to Tony and DK a lot. And then Cal came to one of my games, and just sat and talked to him, and he just talked to me about just I don't promise nobody anything. Everything's gonna be earned. But one thing I will say is I always play freshman, and that kind of just made my.
Even back then, he said I always play freshman. And did you all decide to come together, or was it he recruited each of you individually? How did that work?
Well, it was individually. When I got to Laurinburg, Dozier, Cooper, and Sean were already signed to Memphis.
I see. They were already signed to Memphis.
Yeah, and they were trying to get me and Chris to come, but we were actually getting recruited by a lot of the same schools because we were the same position. And one day, Chris had asked Kellogg for my number, and Chris is like, "We don't know each other from a hole in the wall." And Chris is like, "Man, I hear a lot about you through coaches. I'm sure it's same, vice versa." He's like, "Are you gonna go to Memphis? If you go to Memphis, I'm coming."
Really?
And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And we came on board.
So it wasn't because a lot of people, if you play the same position, you're like, I'm not going if you're going. And yet you guys decided we're both going. Even though you're different kind of players, obviously. We're different kind of players. But
we just kind of looked at the roster. We knew they were thin at the guard spot on the wing, and we had a chance to come in and play some minutes. We knew Rodney was there, but outside of that, we felt like we come and make an impact, and the rest, it kind of worked out for us.
It's like, for me, it was funny because Tick Price had been fired, right? And Tick gets fired, and Johnny Jones gets the interim job. And like a lot of interims, you see there's a push, like, let's get him to, people liked him, he's a charming guy. And there was a big push. And I actually wrote at the time, I said, no, you got to go get Calipari. Like, if he's available, you got to get Cal. And so then the first press conference was just crazy when they hired him. It was at the Pyramid, just immense press conference when they hired him. But then the funny thing is that Cal didn't, like, I'm not a guy who criticized basketball strategy. It's just not, John knows a hell of a lot more about that than me. I would never do that. But I would criticize him like, remember when you guys had the fight against Tulane? Was it Tulane? And you had a bunch of guys suspended, remember? And John, he had a bunch of guys suspended, and then he said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to suspend him for the first conference game because it'll be more meaningful. Well, that was BS. Like, it was, and I would call him on stuff like that. And so John hated me. Like, John hated me. But he was still fun to cover. And the other thing about it is even though he hated me, he wouldn't ever restrict access. Practices were open. Like, it's crazy the access we got. And I'd go to his house on Selection Sunday and everything else. And but John, and I don't know if didn't you see this? John liked having some enemies. He liked to have, it motivated him. And so I don't know, like, after the first year, I actually went by and I saw him. I said, here's a pile of stuff that I wrote, everything, because he always said I never read it. That's what he always say. I never read anything. Yeah. So I brought him everything I'd written, and I'd said, read it. And if you have any problems with it, let me know. And he wouldn't, he didn't want to do that. And so, but like, I remember when he recruited Wani, there were people who criticized him because it was, when he hired Milt, because they criticized him because they're like, that's just a package deal. And I praised it. I said, who cares? It's a package. If you can get Wani because it's a package deal, and Milt, Milt knows a lot about basketball. So I never knew quite why he hated me, but he did hate me. And that I just came to accept it. Like, that was, and it was still a hell of a fun ride. I mean, it was a crazy fun ride, and you guys were great. It's not just that you were good at basketball. The personalities were good, didn't you think? I mean, that was the other part about it. It was easy to attach to you and to CDR and, and right down the line, it was, and Joey, obviously. So it was a group that was easy to cover because you were so much fun.
Yeah, if you could say one of your funniest stories about Cal, what would it be?
Well, it's not a, I don't know. I mean, he would say stuff all the time. Like, he'd say stuff like, I remember when he said, who was the shooter who he said was leading he'd just make stuff up all the time. He'd say, what was the name of the shooter? He said was the leading scorer at points per minute in the country. We're not even close. But this is one thing John did that, do you remember Smitty, right?
Yep.
So Smitty came up to me one day at practice and he said, hey, Geoff, me and some buddies have a bet. We bet that, I bet that you passed the Washington, D.C. bar. He bet that you passed the Massachusetts bar exam. And I'm like, who the hell has that kind of a bet? Like, that's what bar exam I passed? Because I'd been a lawyer in my past life. And the truth of the matter is I passed the New York bar exam because I'm from Buffalo originally, and then you can waive into DC. But the reason that they asked me that question was because I had criticized John, and John had this theory that the reason why I was no longer a lawyer was because I'd failed the bar exam, and he wanted to find out that he wanted to get stuff on me and prove that I'd failed the bar exam because he was like, so I don't know if that's a funny story, But like that is a story about John. But I don't know. He was something else, man. He was something else. And I would hire him in a minute to coach my basketball team. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, he was awesome.
How much do you keep in touch with him?
He was, he for us, he was just, he kind of was able to relate to everybody's different personalities. He coached you up. He was tough on you, but at the same time, he, knew how to kind of get the best out of you. So it was like, it was a win-win for me. I had a blast playing for him.
When you would hear people say that John just rolls the ball out AAU, but like that was one of the, it was BS. I mean, John, you guys couldn't have played as hard and as well together but that was one of the things people like to say. Do you remember that? And it was BS. Here's one time I really remember John, I loved. It was at one of the NCAA tournament press conferences, and CDR was they call up particular people. They probably called you a lot to go talk in the opening press conferences at the at the NCAA tournament. And John said, he said he was reading today something about CDR and his neck tattoos that was critical, right? And he just went off on the reporters and he said, you know what? Whose neck tattoo? That's his mother. It's his mother. And then he told a story about CDR and to not judge players, because they don't look exactly like you look. And it was one of the things I admired about John is I did feel like he was always in your corner.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing, whether we were right or wrong, his biggest thing would always be like, you know what, as long as you're honest with me, I got your back. Once you lie to me or you I got to find out other things, I'm done. It's over.
All right. So the stripper furs, do you remember when that was happening? Joey and the furs being stolen?
Whose jewelry?
So there was a story out we got a police report saying that $10,000 of furs had been stolen from from the.
That was the year before I got there.
Oh, that was the year before you got there.
Yeah, that was the year before I got
there. And what had happened was we're like, how the hell do they have $10,000 of furs, right? Like they're basketball players. How do they have $10,000 of furs? And what happened was that Joey had been they've been filing the police report, and they said, well, what else was stolen? And he said, well, some furs. And how much do you think they were worth? And Joey didn't know. He said, what? $10,000. Well, they were furs. They were fake furs. And Gary Parrish, who was reporting at the time, he got a call from one of the assistants. He said, those aren't $10,000 furs. Those are stripper furs. And so that was one. But there's a million. There's a million. How often are you in touch with John?
Not much. I reach out, holidays and, season. Usually after the season is when he's better at communicating.
Do you look back at that as just a great period of your life? Or is there a little piece that's unfinished because you didn't win the title?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
When you look back at that period, is it this great period of your life, or is there a little piece that's unfinished because you didn't win the title?
Oh, no doubt about it. That haunts to this day. Like every time I watch Kansas on TV, I want to throw something at the TV.
Yeah.
What's your take now on Memphis and the program and the direction? Same with Penny, being a hometown hero. Even myself, I love watching them play. I think they can be a lot better than what they are. But I think I've seen something about if they give it to the NIT, they may not accept it or something. I wasn't too happy to see that.
Well, I don't think that's so. What happened was I was on that Zoom call yesterday, and what happened was Danielle, who you had on your podcast last week, Danielle Lerner, just asked Penny if you happen to not make the NCAA tournament and you get an NIT bid, would you accept it? And Penny was just non-committal. And I don't blame him because he's not focused on the NIT now. He's focused on making the NCAA tournament. He said, I don't know. We're not really thinking about the NIT. So I don't think they were indicating that they wouldn't accept it really. I think Penny was just saying,
we're going to make the tournament.
Yeah, he didn't say it like that, but he didn't really want to field an NIT question at this point because they still want to make the tournament. You know, I was one of the people who advocated hiring Penny, and it's been great in terms of, you know, generating enthusiasm, ticket sales, recruiting, all of that. But to say that there haven't been some disappointments would be, you know, to fool yourself. Of course there have been, and I don't think you would have expected this year that they would lose to VCU and Western Kentucky and Auburn and Tulsa twice, and that they would struggle offensively as much as they did, that they would still have the turnover issues that they have. And so it does feel like, you know, this is year 3, and it does feel like it's time to make the tournament. They obviously have a shot to make the tournament, but would I predict it at this point? No, they gotta be practically perfect down the stretch, and they haven't been so far all year. So, you know, they do have an opportunity though in front of them, and it's not like they have to do anything impossible. You know, it's not like they have to beat Baylor and Gonzaga. They you know, they got to beat teams that they should beat, and then Houston, and they can do that. I don't know, when you look at it and you see their struggles offensively, both as a former player, now a coach, what do you see? Like, what is the challenge offensively that they have? Why do they struggle? Or obviously they were getting better before the break, but what was the essence of the issue as far as you could tell?
Oh, for what I watch now, I think the issues for them is, you know, the scoring is they have a group of guys who can score, but they don't have one guy who can just take over a game. And I think, you know, I think that's the one thing we're lacking, because you look at most teams who are very good, they always have a guy, or some really good teams, the Baylor's, the Gonzagas, have 2 or 3 guys who at any given time can get a bucket. I think that's what we're missing. I think Landis Nolley is pretty good, but you know, I think he doesn't. He's not going to go give you 30. In which, you know, what helped us, we had Chris Douglas Roberts, who, and anytime we need a basket, he'll score a basket. So you know, I think that's the one thing that's lacking. And in the beginning, you know, I felt like everyone was trying to play to impress and play to try to get drafted and things of that nature, and it was kind of kicking them in the ass a little bit. And I think now they're finally seeing that in order for them to do something, they have to kind of play as a team. And I think Penny finally got a grasp of it and kind of got them going a little bit before they got.
It didn't feel like with you all that there were a lot of egos in terms of competing with each other internally, and how does that happen? And then you add D Rose to the mix, and you obviously have CDR, who's, you know, All-American. How does that work? And how does that work so seamlessly?
Oh man, it was easy. We were all careless, man. We just wanted to win. I think we really didn't care. You know, it's crazy. We, like, some of the guys never spoke about the NBA. We watch games and things of that nature. You know, like, and Cal would just always tell us, you know, like, individual success will come with team success. The better we do, the more people got eyes on you guys, the more people will watch you. And so when Derek came in, it was just easier. You know, we already played with Rodney and Sean, who are first-round picks. So they didn't have that same microscope on them that Derek had. But, you know, when Derek came in, he was humble. He wanted to win, and it made the transition easy. And then the next year when Tyreek came, so these guys were coming into a system where our coach, he let it be known from the beginning, it's about the team. And, you know, he still allowed guys to play their game and be themselves. And none of us were jealous of each other. We were always happy for one another. So I think that's why we were so successful.
Yeah, no, it's striking because I do think you're right. Early on, particularly on this team, I think that was an issue. Like, everyone wants their shine a little bit. And but I also agree that I think you're right, that it was better before the break. Now, who knows what it's going to be like coming out of this break? You've seen some teams, you know, Gonzaga comes out and they're still Gonzaga. You know, you see other teams. St. Louis comes out of a break and they lose. They look terrible. So it'll be interesting to see. You know, at least they get Tulane to start, and it doesn't mean they can't lose to Tulane. They can, but that's that's a good way to come out of this, is to start with Tulane and then go from there. It would be fun to be back in the tournament. 7 years is too long. Isn't it frustrating watching the program be out of it for 7 straight years, not in the tournament?
Oh, no, for me, I think I would just love to see him be more consistent. Would love to see him in the NCAA tournament as automatic lock, every year. I think for us, like all of us guys who played there, we all speak all the time. And, for us, it was like, we knew we were a top 2 or 3 seed every year. I was never anything lower than a 2 seed. So, I
You were
think,
never lower than a 2 seed?
my freshman year, we were a 1 seed in the West. My sophomore year, we were a 2 seed. We were a 2 seed in the South. My junior year, we were 1 seed. My senior year, we were a 1 as well.
Damn.
Yeah.
That is a hell of a run. That's a hell of a run you guys put together. What do you think when you think back to the UCLA game? Was it you on that? You were on that team, right?
Yeah, my freshman year.
Yeah, that was freshman year. You
Yeah,
could have won the title that year. You would have run into Florida ultimately. That's a good Florida team.
Yeah, man. I think we played terrible. Man, we only scored like 45 points.
Played terrible. Yeah, that was
We were too confident, I think, too, because we played them early in the year and beat them by like 25 points in the Garden. And like we were kind of like, oh, we're gonna kill these guys, and we just couldn't buy a basket, man. Like it was bad.
And then it starts to build on itself. I bet. You're like yeah. No, that was a rough one. But no, it was fun. It was a fun stretch.
What's it like for you, man? What some of the guys that you're covering now with the Memphis team? What are some of the guys that you really enjoy watching play?
Well, one of the things I'm sad about is that because of COVID, we don't know them as well. You only talk to them on Zoom, and it's all, if I wanted to do a feature story on you, I could have asked you, hey, can I get, 10, 15 minutes and we could sit on the bleachers, whatever, and we could talk, and you end up sort of forming a relationship with players a little bit. And now it's all Zoom. And so it's sort of hard. Like, I don't really have any real sense of what Landers Nolly's like. I've never met him in person,
Yeah.
With you guys also, like, we'd be in the locker room right afterwards. Right. And you'd be, and so it was just a different level of rapport that we had with him than now. Honestly, I have a hard time but Alo, we knew, because we knew him, growing up, and obviously he has struggled. He's had his ups and downs as a point guard, but it's hard not to, and maybe you identify with it, how much he cares. Like, he bleeds, he cares about Memphis basketball the way that Memphis fans would hope a player would care about Memphis basketball. I think it really is a point of pride to him. And there's a couple games this year, like the South Florida game, they were going to lose that game. And then Alo just, he willed them to win it. And so obviously he's not a pretty player. He's not a great shooter. He's, but he's not the biggest guy, but I would like to see Alo in the tournament. I just think I would like to see him in the tournament. In terms of what, like, and Landers' shot's a thing of beauty, right? I mean, he's got a gorgeous stroke. So, those are some of the guys that that are, but mostly I'd like to see Boogie get it straightened out. Like, here's a guy who comes all the way from California and at one point thinks he's going to Duke, and you can just see he's in his head a lot, right? And so I root for him because I think he's a good kid, and I know he wants it badly. And DJ, same thing. Like, DJ wants it. These guys have the weight of the world on their shoulders. Like, they're quote unquote supposed to make the NBA, and that pressure has to get to them. And so I'd like to see the whole outfit flourish. But I think the guy that I pull for more than any other is Alo. Do you know Alo well? Like, do you know Alo? Have you, over the years,
Well, yeah, like I over the years, yeah, we kind of, talking a little bit, just, I'm a huge fan of his, because, I think he plays that same role that I played when I was there.
Right.
I think maybe, it's just different now because, like, we had a lot of guys, but Cal, would go his main 7 guys, and Well, other guys would get minutes, but it's spot minutes. We were all playing 30-plus minutes a game.
Do you think that helps? You think it helps to play, to get into – I mean, that's one of the things that people have criticized, that I've criticized Penny for, is that the rotations are so – sometimes it's 11 guys. Sometimes, he plays a lot of guys. And, one day it'll be Jaden starting, and the next day he won't get – it's also – it seems to me that it's hard for guys to get in a rhythm then, but it's also – it's easier for guys to – like everyone can be unhappy then. You know what I mean? If you have 7 or 8 guys, you've established their role. Those 8 guys are going to be happy. And then the guys who aren't going to be happy, but you don't have a whole roster of people who are wondering, up and down the roster, what minutes they're going to get.
Yeah, it's difficult, as a player, you want to be out there, and I'm sure those guys want to be out there for a long period of time. I think, he shuffles the lineups a bit, then, the subbing, probably depending on what he sees and things of that nature. But, for me as a player, I don't want to come out unless I'm in foul trouble. I felt and I think, I think that relationship goes back to it with Kyle was just more like. You
never came out. You obviously led the team in minutes every year, right? Didn't you lead the team in minutes?
Yeah, I led us in minutes all 4 years.
All 4 years. And what'd you average?
I averaged like 34 minutes a game.
34 minutes a game.
I was the best defender, so in coach's mind is he needed me on the floor to stop people from scoring.
Right.
And I loved it because I knew I wasn't coming out much.
What was your best offensive game?
I'm sorry?
What was your best offensive game? Do you remember? Do you have a high scoring game?
Oh, yeah. My freshman year, I had like 32 at Cincinnati.
At Cincinnati?
Yeah.
That's a tough place. Cincinnati, did they play in the big place or did they play on campus, those games?
Yeah, yep. Right by the football field.
Right by the football field. Yeah, that's a tough place to play. That was a tough place to play.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They had like James White and those guys that year.
Right.
So, it's bad. I think the guys now will be okay, man. I think it's a matter of them finding themselves, especially like you said, they got the conference tournament. If they can kind of get in a groove before that, like you said, you go in there and you should have an easy game that first game, and then you got to go beat a Wichita, you got to go beat a Tulsa or Houston. Those are the 3 teams that you have to kind of beat to win a NCAA bid, right. And it's doable because they're all equal. I don't think Houston has the ranking, but all those guys.
Houston's lost. Obviously, they lost. Caleb Mills and then they've lost 3 out of their 5 conference games. It's they can obviously be beaten. They have been beaten. They're a really good team, and I would say, if they played Memphis, 10 times, they'd win most of them. But they're not going to play 10 times. They're going to play 1 or 2 times, depending. And it'll be interesting to see with the schedule. I do think they'll get an extra game in against Houston, and and obviously you got to win one of them. And they made it difficult for themselves by some. You just look back at it and you think, if they just reverse the Auburn game or Western Kentucky game or one of the 2 Tulsa games, or then they wouldn't necessarily be in this position, but they are. And so all there is to do is to go win it. Yeah,
definitely, man. Geoff, I appreciate your time, man, so much.
Oh, it's fun. It's good to see you again, Antonio. Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Thanks very much. I had you on back when I did a TV show, Sports Files. You came out there and did that with me, so I figured I owed you. Yeah. I appreciate it. Good to see you again, and good luck with this.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.